When did someone learn the hard way that you weren't being self-deprecating? My family treats me like I'm basically a doctor, even though I've told them 1,000 times that I just work at CVS pharmacy counting pills into bottles. They introduce me at parties as our medical expert and ask me to diagnose every weird rash or mysterious pain they have, even though I told them I flunked out of medical school after failing anatomy 3 times, but they think I'm just being self-deprecating when I mention it. My brother constantly texts me photos of suspicious moles asking if they look cancerous, while my mom calls me instead of her actual doctor when she feels dizzy. I keep explaining that my medical knowledge extends to knowing that ibuprofen helps with headaches, and that antibiotics need to be finished completely, but they just nod and say, I'm being modest about my expertise. The family camping trip last 4th of July turned into an absolute nightmare that finally showed them exactly how much medical training I actually had. We were at this remote campsite about 2 hours from the nearest hospital celebrating Uncle Craig's 60th birthday, when he suddenly grabbed his leg and started hopping around yelling that something bit him. Everyone laughed at first thinking he was being dramatic until he pulled up his jeans, and we saw 2 small puncture wounds on his calf already starting to swell and turn purple. My aunt screamed, "Snake bite," and the entire campsite erupted into chaos. I immediately said we needed to call 911, but my mom grabbed my shoulders and announced to everyone that they didn't need to panic because I was here. I failed out of medical school. I protested, but she laughed and told everyone I was always so funny about downplaying my accomplishments. My dad was already pushing me toward Uncle Craig while telling everyone to give the medical expert some space. Uncle Craig was sitting on a picnic bench with his leg propped up, and the swelling had spread halfway up his shin, making it look like someone had stuffed a baseball under his skin. My sister was already running over with the cheap first aid kit from our tent, acting like I'd requested medical supplies, while my cousin asked if we should suck the venom out, and my aunt started Googling snakebite treatments on her phone with 1 bar of signal. That's when my dad had his brilliant idea to make a tourniquet because he'd seen it in a movie once. Before I could stop him, he'd wrapped his belt so tight around Uncle Craig's thigh that Uncle Craig started screaming in pain, and his entire lower leg began turning blue. My cousin's girlfriend chimed in that we needed to cut an X over the bite marks to let the poison drain out, and suddenly my brother was approaching with his hunting knife. Uncle Craig groaned, "Listen to her, you idiots, she's saying hospital." But my dad interrupted, claiming Uncle Craig was getting delirious from the venom. His leg was now swollen to twice its normal size, and he'd started complaining about tingling in his fingers. I grabbed the nearest phone, but my mom pulled it out of my hands and tossed it on the ground. Uncle Craig started dry heaving, and my aunt began crying that he was dying, while my dad tightened the tourniquet even more, despite Uncle Craig's leg looking like an overstuffed purple sausage about to burst. The situation completely spiraled when my aunt decided we needed to elevate his heart above the wound, and made everyone help flip Uncle Craig completely upside down with his head on the ground and his feet propped against a tree. He immediately started choking and gasping while blood rushed to his face, but my family insisted I knew what I was doing by trying this experimental technique, even though I was trying to stop the technique from happening at all. A park ranger finally showed up after hearing the commotion and took one look at Uncle Craig hanging upside down with a purple balloon for a leg and immediately called for a medical helicopter. "Thank God," I said, but my mom told the ranger I had everything under control and was actually a medical professional. The ranger looked at me skeptically and asked what my treatment plan was, and when I said, "Get him to a real hospital immediately," my family started explaining that I was being too modest about my methods. The ranger ignored them and had to physically fight my dad to remove the tourniquet, which had been on for almost 40 minutes. When the helicopter arrived, the actual paramedics looked horrified at what they found, and one of them asked who the hell had been treating this patient. Everyone proudly pointed at me, and the paramedic said, "Ma'am, this is exactly how you kill someone with a snake bite," loud enough for my entire family to hear. Uncle Craig ended up spending 5 days in the ICU with compartment syndrome from the tourniquet and severe complications from being held upside down while his blood pressure was already dropping. The doctor told us he would have been fine with just anti-venom if he'd arrived within the first hour, but the tourniquet had cut off blood flow so long it caused permanent nerve damage. Uncle Craig walks with a permanent limp now, and every family gathering he tells everyone how I almost killed him.